Once upon a time, in a modest three-story home, lived a 12-year-old boy named Saj with his mother and younger sister. Their house, once filled with laughter and the warmth of a complete family, had been built by Saj's father, a hard-working man employed by a private company. But 5 years ago, tragedy struck their peaceful lives. His father passed away suddenly at just 35 years old. His death was not only an emotional loss, but also a financial catastrophe. He had been the sole provider, and his passing left an irreplaceable void. Saj's mother, only 27 at the time, found herself alone, burdened with the overwhelming responsibility of raising 2 children. She was consumed by sorrow, but the fear of not being able to provide for her children was even more unbearable. The company where Saj's father had worked gave them a mere 200,000 taka, around $2,000, as compensation. It was nowhere near enough to sustain them. In their darkest hour, they turned to family and friends, hoping for support, but life has a cruel way of revealing who truly cares. One by one, people who had once been close to them vanished. The warmth of relatives turned cold, and those who had once been frequent visitors to their home became distant strangers. Left to fend for herself, Saj's mother knew she had to act quickly. At first, she tried to manage with the little savings they had left, cutting costs wherever she could. But within just 10 months, the money was gone. She had no choice but to step out into the harsh world and find work. With no prior experience and no higher education, she took the only jobs available to her, working as a housemaid. Her days became a blur of endless labor, scrubbing floors, washing clothes, and cooking for others. But even with 3 jobs, earning a combined 12,000 taka per month, it was barely enough to cover rent, utilities, and her children's education. There was nothing left for herself. Despite the hardships, Saj's mother prioritized her children's education, believing it was their only way to escape this cycle of suffering. Saj, understanding his mother's sacrifices, tried his best to focus on school. But hunger gnawed at him, weakening his body and mind. One day, after 2 full days without food, Saj felt his strength fading. His stomach ached, and exhaustion took over. He could barely keep his eyes open in class, his vision blurring as he fought to stay conscious. His teacher below noticed the change. The once attentive boy was now pale and weak, struggling to stay awake. Concerned, Below approached him. "Saj, are you feeling all right?" he asked gently. Forcing a weak smile, Saj nodded. "Yes, sir. I'm fine." But Below wasn't convinced. "Tell me the truth," he insisted. "You don't look well." Saj hesitated, then, with a voice barely above a whisper, admitted, "We haven't eaten for 2 days. There's no food at home." Hearing these words, Below's heart sank. Without hesitation, he stood up, took Saj by the hand, and led him to the teacher's lounge. He quickly called the school janitor, handed him some money, and instructed him to buy food from the market. Minutes later, the janitor returned with a burger and a cold drink. Below handed them to Saj and said, "Eat this. You need to regain your strength." At first, Saj hesitated, but as soon as he took the first bite, a spark of life returned to his body. With each bite, his weakness slowly faded, his mind clearing, his vision sharpening. For the first time in days, he felt human again. Below watched him with a warm smile. "How are you feeling now?" Saj, with newfound energy, nodded. "Better. Thank you, sir." "Good," Below said. "Now go back to class. But after school, come to my office." When the final bell rang, Saj made his way to Below's office, still feeling weak but more hopeful. Below was waiting for him with a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, Saj. I'm going to help you," he said, standing up. He placed a comforting hand on Saj's shoulder and led him to his bicycle. "Come on, we're going to the market." Saj, confused but grateful, climbed onto the back of the bicycle. Together, they rode to the market, where Below bought bags of rice, flour, lentils, sugar, and all the essentials needed for a family to survive. But he didn't stop there. He personally carried the groceries to Saj's house. When they arrived, Saj's mother was still at work, as she usually returned home late at night. Below placed the groceries in the kitchen and turned to Saj. "From now on, you don't need to worry about food. I will make sure your family has everything you need," he promised. "Focus on your studies. That's your only job. I'll take care of the rest." A wave of relief washed over Saj. He had never imagined that someone outside his family could care so much. Below's kindness felt like a beacon of light in the darkness of his life. True to his word, Below didn't just help once. He made it his mission to support Saj's family. Every month, he delivered groceries, ensuring they never went hungry again. He even spoke to the school administration and covered Saj's unpaid tuition fees. One evening, when Saj's mother returned home, she was stunned to find their kitchen overflowing with food. In disbelief, she turned to her son. "Saj, where did all this come from?" she asked, her voice shaking. With a smile, Saj explained everything. "It's below, Ma. He's been helping us. He even paid my school fees." Overwhelmed, his mother broke down in tears. She could not comprehend such selfless generosity from someone who had no obligation to them. She prayed for Below's well-being, grateful beyond words. But Below remained humble. When Saj's mother tried to thank him, he simply said, "You don't need to thank me. Consider me your brother. Helping you is the least I can do. You and your children are like family to me." With Below's support, Saj's life transformed. No longer consumed by hunger and stress, he poured himself into his studies. His grades improved, and the boy who once struggled to stay awake in class became one of the top students. Below's kindness was not just about providing food. It was about restoring hope. He instilled in Saj the belief that no matter how difficult life became, education was the key to breaking free from poverty. And so, Saj worked harder than ever, determined to succeed, not just for himself, but to one day repay the man who had saved him from despair. Sometimes family isn't defined by blood, but by the people who stand by us in our darkest moments. Below proved that even a single act of kindness could change a life forever. Sajid's journey was one of resilience, kindness, and the power of human generosity. From a young boy who had lost everything to a man standing at the threshold of a bright future, his story was nothing short of extraordinary. Years ago, life had been cruel to Sajid's family. His father, the sole provider, passed away suddenly, leaving behind a wife and 2 children with no financial security. His mother, once a devoted homemaker, found herself in the unfamiliar and harsh reality of single parenthood. With no relatives or friends willing to lend a helping hand, she was left to navigate the unforgiving world on her own. Desperate to provide for her children, she took on whatever work she could find, working as a housemaid in multiple homes, scrubbing floors and washing dishes from dawn until late at night. Despite her tireless efforts, the money she earned was barely enough to keep food on the table. Bills piled up, and hunger became a constant shadow looming over them. For Sajid, the burden was unbearable. A 12-year-old boy should have been worrying about school and friends, not whether there would be food for dinner. He tried to remain strong for his mother and his little sister, but the harsh reality of their poverty began to weigh on him. There were days when he went to bed with an empty stomach, his body weak and his mind clouded with exhaustion. One such day, after 2 full days without a meal, Sajid sat in his classroom, his vision blurred, his head spinning. His teacher, Mr. Below, noticed something was wrong. Sajid, usually attentive, was pale and struggling to stay awake. Concerned, Mr. Below approached him gently, asking if he was all right. Sajid, unwilling to burden anyone with his troubles, tried to insist that he was fine. But his body betrayed him. He was too weak to keep up the act. The truth came out in a hushed confession. "We haven't eaten in 2 days," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Below's heart clenched at the words. Without hesitation, he sent for food, and as Sajid took his first bite, something inside him reignited. A small but significant reminder that kindness still existed in the world. But Mr. Below's compassion did not stop there. Seeing the depth of Sajid's struggles, he made a silent vow to help. After school, he took the boy to the market, purchasing bags of rice, lentils, flour, and sugar, enough to sustain his family for weeks. When they arrived at Sajid's home, his mother was still at work. Below quietly stocked the kitchen, ensuring that when she returned, she would not have to face the pain of an empty pantry. Looking at the young boy, he spoke with quiet determination. "From now on, you don't have to worry about food. I will make sure you and your family are taken care of. You focus on your studies. That is your way out of this." Sajid, overwhelmed with gratitude, could barely find the words to respond. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of relief. Someone cared. Someone was willing to help. True to his word, Mr. Below continued to support the family, delivering groceries every month and even speaking to the school administration to clear Sajid's unpaid tuition fees. His mother, upon learning of this stranger's kindness, was moved to tears. She had spent years believing they were alone in their suffering, yet here was a man with no obligation to them, going out of his way to ensure they had a chance at a better life. Mr. Below never asked for anything in return. "Consider me your brother," he told her humbly. "Helping you is the least I can do." With his basic needs taken care of, Sajid found a renewed sense of purpose. He threw himself into his studies, determined to honor the sacrifices his mother had made and the kindness of the man who had changed his life. He no longer sat in class worrying about his next meal. He focused on his lessons, driven by the belief that education was his key to a brighter future. Months turned into years, and Sajid's hard work paid off. He excelled in his studies, earning the respect and admiration of his teachers. Then one day the news came. He had been awarded a full scholarship to a prestigious university abroad. The moment he had once thought impossible had arrived. Tears of joy streamed down his mother's face as she hugged him tightly. "I am so proud of you," she whispered. On the day of his departure, as he stood at the airport with his mother and sister by his side, he made them a promise. "I will work hard. I will build a better life for us." As the plane soared through the sky, Sajid looked out the window, reflecting on his journey. He had come so far, from a hungry child struggling to stay awake in class to a young man on the brink of a new future. None of it would have been possible without his mother's resilience and Mr. Below's unwavering kindness. The university provided everything he needed: food, accommodation, and financial support. But even as he settled into his new life, his thoughts never strayed far from home. Every month, he sent money back to his mother, ensuring she no longer had to work as a housemaid. "You've done enough, Amma," he told her. "It's time for you to rest." As time passed, Sajid's financial situation improved further. He took on a part-time job, and with the extra income, he was able to send even more support home. His mother, once trapped in the cycle of poverty, was now able to live comfortably. She renovated their small home, replaced their worn-out furniture, and for the first time in years, allowed herself to breathe freely. Life had changed in ways Sajid had never imagined. From despair to hope, from struggle to success, he had rewritten his family's story. But he never forgot the lesson he had learned. Kindness has the power to transform lives. One day he would return, and just as Mr. Below had done for him, he would find another struggling child, another family in need, and offer them the same lifeline that had once saved him. Because kindness, once given, never truly ends. It ripples forward, changing lives forever.